everybody. Welcome to the Otherz podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Penny. A new guest joining me this week, long-time Neptune's N.E.R.D. Pharrell fan. Some listeners out there will probably know him via different groups and Instagram and stuff like that. But joining me from, I was going to say the sunny UK. It's not sunny at all, having the conversation we just had before this. But joining me from the rainy north of the UK, Whyte. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, man. How are you?
Not too bad. Normally on here I complain about the awful snow and ice and bad weather, but we're now into summer season, I think, so enjoying the sunshine, or trying to at least, now that we're allowed out of the house a little bit here. And despairing on a daily basis at what's going on in the world. So it's a mixed bag at the moment, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy right now.
How are you coping over there in the UK?
I'm good. I'm actually really enjoying this lockdown. Just doing nothing, just relaxing. First time I've sat still and been in Leeds for months. Probably years. Probably like the longest I've been in Leeds for years. So I'm really enjoying it.
I think you're probably the only person I've spoken to that's said they're enjoying it. I think most people are kind of crawling the walls at this point, but...
Oh, really? Yeah, I'm just taking this time to make music. That's pretty much all I'm doing. Sitting in, making music, writing a bit, and that's it. So, yeah, it's good.
It's a good thing to do, yeah. You know, I've been trying to use my time a bit more productively, let's say, and, you know, work on the podcast and some videos and the website and bits and pieces. So yeah, not too bad here. And I guess over here in Finland, we're not quite as locked down as the UK and the US and in other places. So we can actually get out and about, and all our bars and restaurants opened up 2 weeks ago, I think, something like that. So yeah, we can actually get out and do stuff now, although we still need to, you know, socially distance ourselves and all that kind of thing. But at least we can go to the pub.
Quite jealous.
You'll get there eventually.
Yeah, 3 weeks' time, fingers crossed.
Yeah. So a bit of a weird time to record a podcast with, you know, everything that's going on in the world at the moment, and we'll probably touch on some of that later as it ties into some of the BBC, EU, and US news. But first, we'll kind of do our usual, and we'll go through a track of your choice this week. You picked from the list that I have at the moment, and you picked, quite surprisingly, Yellow Light from the Despicable Me 3 soundtrack.
What's that surprise?
I don't know. To me, it's one of those kind of underrated songs, and I really enjoy it and quite like it. But it's not, I think, like real, I say real isn't the right word, amongst a lot of, you know, N.E.R.D. and Pharrell fans, you know, I think a lot of them aren't really too keen on the soundtrack type stuff, you know, the SpongeBob, the Despicable Me, and all those kinds of things. They're not, you know, they don't sound like, you know, real Neptunes or real N.E.R.D. type tracks, and I think that puts a lot of people off. But I find a lot of the soundtrack stuff is, yeah, very underrated.
Yeah, I think that's why I picked it. I mean, I guess in a way, I'm kind of that typical fan that thinks the soundtrack stuff isn't necessarily true Neptunes, true Pharrell, true N.E.R.D. But that's why I picked it, because it's something different to talk about. It's definitely a different track compared to not just Pharrell stuff in general, but even compared to the previous Despicable Me songs. So I thought it was a good one to choose.
Yep, definitely. So a couple of facts to start us off. So as I said, it was a single release from the Despicable Me 3 soundtrack, the worst of the Despicable Me films, in my opinion. Not that I'm a big fan of any of them, but released on the 9th of June 2017. We record this on the 11th of June 2020, so just over 3 years old. The video was directed by Brad Abelson and Alan Bibby. I think Brad Abelson works for Illumination, also works on The Simpsons. Alan Bibby is a, what's the word? Just a video director who works with a lot of the, you know, kind of larger companies and artists in general. At the moment, you know, 5 million YouTube views, which I thought would probably have more than that with the kind of whole Despicable Me tie-in to it. But yeah, 5 million. I don't think it was released as a physical single. I know it was available for individual download and then obviously as part of the soundtrack album, but from what I could see, it certainly didn't chart anywhere or do anything from that perspective. So if we get into the song and the video, then I guess as you're the guest, I'll let you go first, and you can give me your kind of initial thoughts and opinions.
Okay. Yeah, I'll start with the video then. So I guess when I watched the video, the first thing I got was, it seemed to me that they're trying to recreate Happy. So it's Pharrell, he's dancing around LA, he's trying to look happy. One thing I noticed actually, he looks really uncomfortable. He looks kind of like he's not fully in the moment. It's part where he's trying to march the minions across the street, and he looks almost like he feels a bit embarrassed. Anyway, I think it's trying to mirror Happy. It's him dancing around. Obviously, the song sounds quite electronic, so they've tried to incorporate some kind of computer game element into it, with the minions catching bananas, running through the streets. I quite like the video actually. I especially like the part where it goes to the breakdown and percussion comes in. It goes kind of like an old school video game, which I guess you've seen in a lot of Pharrell videos. You've got things like Everyone Knows remix, Aladdin, which came out recently, It Girl. So yeah, I'm a big fan of any time it does anything like that. That's it. I guess it doesn't really stand out. It's not particularly memorable, but it does its job. I think yeah, it's perfect for a soundtrack.
Yeah, I noticed in the video there's a kind of mixed kind of premise to the video. So when it first starts, I think maybe it's the very first scene or the first kind of cutaway, is you see the minions in two minions, I think, in a apartment building window, which I think Pharrell is sat outside of, and they're fully animated minions. So they already live in this kind of real world that Pharrell is in. And then we kind of get to Pharrell obviously then gets up, starts walking. We get to a stop sign or a cross sign, whatever it is in the US. And then we see these kind of 8-bit minions, and they jump out of the stop sign, and then we've got 8-bit minions in the real world. Then they go on this journey through LA, then they're transported into this kind of computer game, as you mentioned, which Pharrell, wins, and they're transported back to the real world. Then I think we see them again as 8-bit minions, but then again at the end we see them as fully animated minions. That's a very small, minor thing that I'm sure nobody else will notice. Yeah, but it was just a weird. I just found it a weird thing. It was a weird kind of narrative. It didn't kind of quite fit. I got the idea that there were, he was saving these minions and bringing them back to this kind of real world, but they were already in the real world in the first place as these 8-bit characters. Then they went to a computer game. Then they came back. I was going to say I found it confusing. I didn't find it confusing. I just found it a bit, just a slightly weird take on the video.
Yeah, I didn't even notice the storyline. So it's quite good eye you got there.
Yeah, and I imagine it was probably a slightly more fluid storyline that made sense. And I guess it's kind of in the editing where it gets chopped up a little bit, and I was going to say falls down. It doesn't fall down, but just gets a bit confused. Let's say perhaps.
Yeah, because I remember the time that this song came out. There's a lot of people filming from like the windows of their apartment buildings when the video is being made, and I remember there's a scene, and it hasn't come out in any music video, so I assume it was for this, where Pharrell's running down the street and he's being chased by a lot of people I think wearing like green suits. I guess they're going to be replaced by minions. And that scene's nowhere in the video, so I assume there's much more story to it, and they've had to crunch it right down to the point now where you can't quite grasp what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, it's filmed in LA. There's a couple of kind of quite busy streets where you can see they've renamed the streets to generic names. I think one is just called Avenue and one is called something else. So they've obviously had to shut down those roads as well. So yeah, I'm sure that kind of all plays into it, and then the editing plays a part and stuff. So yeah, definitely. I have to know. So we normally talk about the kind of Pharrell fits and the kind of labels that we're kind of seeing in the videos. A really good Pharrell fit in this video, which he kind of keeps throughout the whole video. We've got the pink Tims, which I really, really like for some reason. Yeah, I think they look really good. Some BBC shorts. And if you're a fan of those shorts, I think somebody on Instagram was selling a pair recently, maybe the Sixth Letter or somebody like that. Got a Supreme corduroy cap in yellow, a yellow jacket. I have no idea what the make of it is. And then obviously the signature Pharrell canary yellow diamond ring, which seems to be fairly prominent in a couple of scenes with his hand in front of him, which again, because of the colour of it, kind of ties into the theme of the video. What else have we got? In terms of the kind of content of the song and the lyrics themselves, I hadn't really read too much into it previously, with it being essentially from a kids movie. But then actually reading through the lyrics, and I think if you go on Genius, there are some annotations on there. I'm not quite sure who's made some of the annotations, all the annotations that are on there. But there's actually kind of there's some light-hearted themes in there, but also some serious themes intertwined within the lyrics. It talks. I've got some notes here. Let me have a look. Where are they? So you've got the more serious side about the kind of the current state of the world. Well, at that time, obviously nothing like it is at the moment. Talking about everyone's overdosing, the blue light use, obviously a kind of reference to the blue lights you get from devices and phones and things like that. Mm-hmm. A take on the anxiety and mental health problems in the US and in the world. What else is there? Then it kind of goes into the latter part of the verses, which I think is kind of repeated in a few places, where it gets a bit more kind of light-hearted and a bit more what's the word I'm looking for? Jovial, maybe. Where it kind of goes into where it's talking about these kind of negative things, but it talks about we don't care for no trouble, we're just trying to get in, and it's more about partying isn't the right word, but a different kind of vibe, So it's got this kind of different sort of themes intertwined there within the lyrics. And one thing I also noticed was the kind of different metaphors that Yellow has in this video and in the song. You've obviously got the very obvious, such as the Minions, and it ties into obviously the movie itself. It represents the sun shining down. It's obviously an alternate. It's an alternate to the blue light that's mentioned. But I think as well, it's, as with a lot of Pharrell songs, it also seems like it's a metaphor for God as well, and belief of some kind. There's also a line in there that says, there's a higher power like a yellow light, which my interpretation is it's a very loose reference to a higher power spiritually, and we see that with a lot of Pharrell lyrics where he kind of has these kind of metaphors for God and spiritualism and religion and stuff like that. So that's something I noticed throughout it as well.
Yeah, I noticed that. So I picked up on the fact that, I don't know if you remember, around 2016 Pharrell went and met the MHA Nation, the Native American nation, led by Jasper Youngbear, and he had a conversation with Pharrell about how we are ruled by the elements, how we're ruled by the sun, the wind, water, everything around us. He kind of said, we're products of the universe, and the universe, it kind of shapes us, and we should shape it. I noticed since that point, Pharrell's written tons of songs about the sun being a god. I think Yellow Light was the first one, and then what have I got written down? So he went from Yellow Light, mentions it again in ESP, mentioned it in Lightning Fire Magic Prayer, which also has a native drum pattern. I mentioned it again in Ron and the Sevens. So I feel like that conversation, that experience he had with I need to read it again, MHA Nation, shaped this song. So I think, like you say, it kind of has two meanings. It has multiple meanings, but it's kind of saying, the world is in this state that it's in, and the sun, this higher power, this is the thing that can cure us. Also, I noticed that speaking of metaphors, he seems to be using the character Balthasar Brat as a metaphor for Donald Trump. So he has that line, the Brat is in his tower, and I took that to mean Donald Trump in Trump Tower. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I hadn't actually picked up on that, but that kind of makes sense for around that time, because when did Trump come in? 2016, wasn't it? I think about 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, because we're about to get an election again, aren't we? Well, I say we, not either of us, but people out there in the US listening. So it would have been around that time. So quite possibly that would be a reference, because again, I think since that time we've seen lots of other kind of references, especially on the last N.E.R.D album. Not mentioning Trump directly, but inferring that it's him basically. So I hadn't picked up on that one. It's a good one. What else have we got? So the kind of animation side and the kind of computer game side of this, like yourself, I'm a fan of those kind of 8-bit, 16-bit type videos. This obviously done very well, very slickly. They obviously used the people from Illumination and people that have worked on the movie as well. So as we say, he's kind of transported into this video game where he kind of battles the kind of Brat character in a weird dance-off, which is then finished with a weird Mortal Kombat style move, I noticed. I also noticed as part of that as well, there's again just a strange little interaction as he's going through the kind of the level, as it were, where he encounters the old woman by her window, and she tries to hit him with a rolling pin. And he falls from the building, but then she realizes it's him, and she calls his name out, and then there's all these kind of hearts around her head and stuff. It was just a bit strange that she tries to attack him, but then immediately realizes it's Pharrell Williams. At which point he's already fallen from the window and from the building. But
trying to think about other things I noticed about the song. So the song itself, when it first came out, I used to work for this music blog, and we got sent a press release for the song, and I wouldn't review it because I thought I'd be biased. And at first I didn't actually like it, but I passed it on to the other person I worked with at the time, and he gave it a really good review, which totally changed my perspective on the whole song. He gave it 4 out of 5, and he said the way he interpreted it was it's Pharrell making a statement that it's so avant-garde and so opposite to happy. He was trying to flip his image and maybe turn everyone on to this new sound. And when he said that, it totally changed the way I hear the song. Well, listen to it now, it is quite avant-garde and strange, and has this kind of craftwork feel to it. It's actually really similar to the intro to Light Your Ass on Fire. Really similar progression, that kind of that upwards motion. And I've not heard him do it since. I've not heard him make anything like that for a long time up until that point. I've not really heard him make anything that weird since. And I think it's a really underappreciated track.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's a few tracks on that album, on that Despicable Me 3 soundtrack, that are a bit quirky and a bit different and surprisingly quite good. Yellow Light, I think, is the first track off of the soundtrack. Then you've got Hug Me, which he does with Trey Parker, which again, when I first listened to it, I thought it was quite sort of cheesy and a bit but the more I listened to it, the more it sort of grew on me. And again, it's kind of quite quirky and fun. And what else have you got on there? There's Something Special, which is a really nice track, and shout out to Brent who worked on that. You've got Freedom on there, although we'd previously already had sort of Freedom. Do It is on there, which was made for the movie. Again, a good track. Chuck Berry, Fun, which I think came from one of the previous soundtracks.
On every soundtrack, I think.
Yeah, it probably is. And the kind of main Despicable Me sort of track that he does as well is, I think, is on every soundtrack. But there's a few kind of quirky, interesting songs that are on that album.
Yeah, one thing I noticed is it felt like this album was almost like Pharrell experimenting before moving on to the No One Ever Really Dies album, which I guess came out the same year. We didn't know that album was going to come out at the time, but I noticed that Chuck Berry is really similar to Rolling Stones, and Do It is really similar to Deep Down Body Thirst. And as I mentioned, Yellow Light then leads straight into ESP, Lightning Fire, Magic Prayer, and so on. It just makes you wonder how connected these two albums are. Was he making them at the same time? Did songs switch back and forth between the two? I don't know, but it'd be interesting to find out.
It wouldn't surprise me, because obviously the N.E.R.D album was in the making for quite some time. over, different locations. They were working on bits and pieces, and they went away from it. Then they were coming back to it, and different people were involved at different times as well. I think a lot of the kind of groundwork was done by Mike Larson, that works with Pharrell, and obviously Chad when he's there as well with them. And obviously Mike was very involved in the tracks that are on the Despicable Me soundtrack as well. So there's a good chance that certain elements kind of crossed over and were used in different places, and inspired different things perhaps. To be honest, I think that's all the notes I had for this video. There's not too much to the video and the song itself, apart from the bits that we've discussed. Do you have anything else? Anything specific?
Just trying to see. No, I don't have anything in addition to the things we've discussed. No, nothing additional to add.
Yeah, I think it's one of those. I think there's probably even Pharrell and N.E.R.D fans out there that wouldn't have seen this video or heard some of these songs that appear on these kind of, I was going to say kids soundtracks. They're not necessarily kids soundtracks, but associated with kids films. So if you are one of the people that isn't really aware of what he does away from the Neptunes and N.E.R.D and the kind of big smash hits that he's working on, them definitely go and check out the various soundtracks he's worked on. As we said, there's the Despicable Me stuff, the SpongeBob stuff, which I actually really like. I know a lot of people hate that stuff. I quite like it.
I think it's quite
it's quite fun. It's quite quirky. It's it's a different outlet for him. Where he gets to kind of play around, and also you've got what other soundtracks we've got? The Hidden Figures soundtrack, which is brilliant. The Spider-Man stuff, and the bits with Hans Zimmer and things like that. So there's plenty of exactly. There's plenty of different work out there that's I think appeals to or could appeal to lots of different people that aren't necessarily aware of it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting actually, because before this soundtrack came out, he said he wasn't doing any more soundtracks. Remember, there's an interview and someone said, "Are you doing any more soundtracks?" He said, "No, it's too much work. It takes too much time." And then this soundtrack came out, and Hidden Figures I think came out after that. So it's almost like he did a U-turn, changed his mind.
Yeah, and I think there's lots of things that can play into that. As we say, there may already be rough tracks out there that are being worked on that could be utilised elsewhere. I think money also talks to a certain extent as well. Especially with a huge franchise like Despicable Me and these Minions, and having a 9-year-old kid myself who's watched all these movies about 10,000 bloody times, and who has a room full of all these toys and things. Still, it's there's a lot of money behind it, and it's a big thing, especially from a marketing perspective as well.
Yeah, I can see why he did it.
All right, well, I think that's it for that track. Let's get on to some news and some bits and pieces, and we'll see where some of this leads us. Let's say I think we'll leave the heavier stuff till the end. I'll mention a couple of other random bits. In the last podcast, I mentioned the Run the Jewels 4 album was about to come out. It is now out, with obviously the one Pharrell guest appearance on there. I've given the album a quick listen through only once recently. I did like the Pharrell track. I like the album as a whole, actually. It was a very, very good album. But I need to give it a few more proper listens. The whole album sounded really good. The Pharrell track sounded very good. I don't think he's listed on there as a producer. It is just a kind of writing credit and a verse that he has on there. He's also about to appear on the new Buju Banton album, which comes out on the 26th of June, I think, on a track called Cherry Pie. I think it was probably earlier this year we saw him on his travels in Jamaica or wherever he may have been, recording stuff. So he's got one track where he features. Again, I'm not sure what the kind of production credits are for that.
That's Pharrell and Chad.
Okay. So they're both on there, yep. So that's coming out, as I say, 26th of June, so in a couple of weeks' time. So that's something to look forward to. I think yesterday, as of recording this, we saw the first kind of official press photos and information on the new Adidas Human Race Superstars. These are, well, I think as we say with all Pharrell shoes now, they're interesting in air quotes. I'm not quite sure what to make of them at the moment. As with most Pharrell shoes, they tend to sort of grow on me a little bit. I think these are going to be retailing for $140 US. So people out there in different places, you can do the maths and work out what that is locally to you. But they're obviously the superstar silhouette, but made of multiple different materials and designs. From what I can see, they incorporate some of the stuff from the tennis hues, some of the stuff from the solar hues. I'm sure there's other bits and pieces in there as well. And we've seen him wear them the last couple of months, I think. Obviously sample pairs, and they do look quite good on the feet from what I could see in the limited pictures that we have. So I think there's a couple of white versions, a couple of black versions. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can check those out. But an interesting take on the Superstar. And I think at least the white ones I may look at getting at some point in the future. I can't remember if I mentioned this on the last episode, but there's a new page on the website people should go and check out. I regularly get messages asking who people can follow in terms of people on Instagram or Twitter or wherever it may be who are also into N.E.R.D, Pharrell, the Neptunes, who are buying and selling BBC and Bape and Human Made and stuff like that. So I thought instead of constantly trying to answer all these messages I get, I would put a page up. So you can go over to the Otherz.net. You can go to, I think the page is called Who to Follow. You'll be able to see it in the top navigation bar. But there's currently a list of people who have either been on the podcast or who are friends of the podcast, who are kind of involved in our kind of community in some kind of way. So they're some of the key people to follow initially. If people want to be added to that list and to the page, then drop me a message and I'll happily add people on there. This week we also saw a couple of Pharrell interviews actually with ID magazine. So there's Pharrell and Kanye kind of interviewing each other from what I could see. I haven't had a proper read of it yet, but there's a kind of back and forth with those guys, which was done over the phone. And also Pharrell and Bobby Hundreds from the Hundreds, the clothing company as well. I think in the same issue. And this kind of ties into BBC US doing a collaboration with the Hundreds for a Black Lives Matters t-shirt, which I think by the time this podcast goes out, they will have stopped selling. I think it was only a limited run they were doing orders for. I may be completely wrong. And they may even re-release it, who knows. But I think that ties into that kind of collaboration there. So you can go and obviously check that out on their Instagram and on their US web page to see if that's still on sale. But I think it was limited release only. Just quickly before we move on to the next piece, have you had a chance to read any of that ID magazine interview at all, or the two interviews?
I haven't. I read one really short piece where Kanye West was talking about how Pharrell shaped fashion, how he shaped culture. That kind of really resonated with me actually. When I was a lot younger, so in my early teens, Pharrell was this guy who I'd look up to and be like, wow, there's no one like him. And Kanye mentioned when he put a skateboard on the cover of, I don't know, some magazine.
On the Source, I think, wasn't it?
Source, yeah. I do remember seeing that and being like, wow. Because at the time I was a skater, and I was like, wow, there's finally other people that are different. You don't have to be this stereotype. You have to fit this mold. And yeah, kind of just hit it on the head. And then he kind of finished it off saying, I mean, I'm sure you read it too, right? The part where he says...
I saw a couple of the quotes, yeah.
Yeah, the part where he says that everything that you see now, people are finally realising this is what Pharrell started like 20 years ago, has led to where we are now. I thought that was a really good point.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he mentions in there, as you say, about the kind of, the trend-setting aspect. And yeah, I think Kanye says, yeah, before I was wearing pink polos, Pharrell was out there wearing pink polos and clothes like that weren't seen as, the norm in hip-hop kind of circles and things. Back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was still what we had in the mid 90s. It was still, baggy jeans and hoodies and stuff like that. And they kind of moved it on with these kind of colours and products that weren't necessarily associated with masculinity, let's say. And now, when I was younger as well, I probably wouldn't have been seen dead in anything bright pink. But again, I think it was because of the likes of Pharrell and Kanye. Yeah, I went out and bought one of those bright pink G-Shock watches, which would always get looks and comments in the local pub, and and started wearing other kind of items like that, pink polo shirts, and mixing up the colours a little bit, and then we look at fashion now, and it's like you say, it's what was happening, what they were doing 15, 20 years ago for sure.
Yeah, but someone's got to do it first. Someone's got to break those boundaries, and they did it, definitely.
And also, just on the note of fashion, BBC EU are also doing a Black Lives Matters black on black special edition t-shirt, as well as all their other recent drops as well, which I completely forgot to look at before recording this. They're doing that. I think all of the not just the profits, but all of the money raised goes to a couple of UK charities. And the same with the US one. All the money is going to charities associated with Black Lives Matters. The BBC EU store is also going an extra step. So when the store reopens, I think it's on the 15th of June it reopens, they've got a kind of in-house library with certain books and literature associated with Black Lives Matters. They're also offering up their own time and resource, people that work at BBC EU to do volunteer work, fundraising, helping to kind of commission and set up and run events for people in the black community. So if you are obviously in the UK, and you can reach out to them via email at community@bbcicecream.eu if you have ideas or you'd like some help or advice with certain things. I think it said they're basing it on a kind of quarter by quarter level, I think I read. So obviously there's a set amount per quarter they will probably do, but they are open to ideas and suggestions. So definitely reach out to them if you have anything that you would like them to help you work on, basically. And also, go and cop the t-shirts. Again, I assume there's limited quantity of these t-shirts, but they are still on sale at BBC EU. So get over there or to the US site and definitely get those t-shirts. As I say, the money will go to charity. And also, if you can, donate some money yourself. I think that's kind of all the news I had. Obviously, I think most of the news and what's been going on has been kind of dominated around, rightly so, the whole kind of Black Lives Matter stuff. And we're obviously seeing BBC and other brands now get involved in that and kind of try and do their part and try and help with that. And obviously, I know, I'd say probably the not the majority, because I don't know the exact numbers, but most people that listen to this podcast are in the US. A lot of the people that listen, a lot of our kind of community are black and or non-white. So obviously this impacts a lot of people that listen to this, and I know a lot of people I know that listen to the podcast have been out there at the kind of protests and things like that recently. So a shout out to all of those that are actually out there doing something, getting to the protests. I guess almost getting in harm's way, which they shouldn't be, but they are, unfortunately, because of what's kind of going on mainly in the US, I would say. Although we are seeing it in the UK and other places as well, in terms of the retaliation, I think, that we're seeing from the police and things like that. But if you listen to this podcast and you're out there, make sure you stay safe or as safe as you can. But a shout out to those that are actually out there doing something, let's say. And Aaron, anything else from yourself?
Nothing. Just continue on from your last point about Black Lives Matter and people putting themselves out there. I just want to say, kind of, to everyone protesting, thank you for what you're doing. But the main thing is, as well as this, make sure to take care of yourselves. I've seen a lot of people almost harming themselves, getting too involved, too invested, and not giving themselves time to think and time to recover. Because this is something that's very distressing, and it's something my sister really struggles with. And I've had to tell her to step back. And I imagine there's a lot of people out there that are also feeling stressed and are doing the right thing by getting involved. But just remember to give yourself at least a day. Don't feel guilty for having a day where you can just relax and just heal and just get your head straight before going back out there again. That's kind of all I have to say. On a totally different subject matter, I hate to flip it on its head really quickly, was pomegranate mentioned in the last podcast?
Good question. It has been mentioned. I think maybe when they teased it originally, it was mentioned, but I might not have mentioned it since then, to be honest.
What do you think of it?
I quite like it. I'm not a deadmau5 fan. I couldn't name one of his tracks, to be fair, but I like it as a kind of a laid back, fun summer type song. I enjoyed it. I've only listened to it maybe 3 or 4 times, properly, and it's been on in the background a few times. I probably need to listen to it like a little bit more to actually sort of take it in. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, let's say.
Yeah, it's not a bad song. I've realised though that I'm really biased from this track, because when it first came out, they said the Neptunes and deadmau5. I was like, oh, I love this song. They've finally made deadmau5 good. Oh, I can hear everything they've done on this. This is incredible. And then I did some research, and it turned out that that actual instrumental is just deadmau5. It's been out for like 2 years. You can go on YouTube.
It was sat around for a long time.
Yeah. So the Neptunes possibly didn't do anything on it. Pharrell just probably laid down some vocals. Chad might have added a synth. But as soon as I found that out, for some reason it turned me off the song. So yeah, I need to listen to it again, see if it grows on me. But it's an interesting choice for their big comeback that they would choose a deadmau5 collaboration.
I find it a bit strange, what they're actually doing at the moment and how they're, I guess, it's the kind of branding and marketing side of things which now plays a part in every artist and every producer's life, I guess. But yeah, just how they kind of suddenly came back with a random Facebook page, Instagram account, Twitter account, and we know none of them are particularly active on social media. Pharrell is probably the most active out of them. A lot of his stuff he doesn't necessarily post himself. It's done by his team. So it was strange that there was suddenly all these kind of social accounts for them as the Neptunes, which are obviously trying to push again now for whatever the reason may be. And then as you say, that kind of choice of track as well and person to work with. If they're coming back as the Neptunes, I would have expected it to be a really big name and the Neptunes. Not that deadmau5 isn't a big name, in his own right, and in that world, he's obviously very, very big. But I think to kind of core Neptunes, Pharrell, N.E.R.D fans, it's not necessarily the thing we would necessarily expect.
Yeah.
Or at least I certainly didn't. I would have thought it would be along the lines of Daft Punk and the Neptunes. A name like that really resonates with Neptunes fans and Pharrell fans, who they're kind of tied to a certain extent already. deadmau5 was a little bit left field.
Yeah, it was kind of unexpected. But for those listening that didn't know or didn't read it, a few months ago I went in the studio with the Neptunes to do an article, and when I did that, Chad actually spoke really highly of deadmau5. Said that they went to Art Basel in Miami, and that he saw deadmau5 DJing. How do you describe it? He described it as something like a flock of pterodactyls flying over him. He said that's how the music felt to him, and I think that's what sparked the collaboration. And also, I think at that moment in time, they're kind of, what Pharrell's like. He just wants to work with everyone. If he meets you, he's going to say, "Can we work?" I think that's how it came about. But I agree with you. It's interesting that was the one. I would have thought they'd choose a super A-lister like Dua Lipa or someone for their first track. But I hope there's more to come.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm interested to see how they kind of progress this whole Neptunes thing from that kind of marketing side. Because, previously it's just been, of course, in the past, the name The Neptunes has been used on certain tracks with certain artists, featuring The Neptunes. But they've never been kind of marketed in this way. They've never been...
As if they're an artist themselves.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I just find it a bit strange. And also, again, how obviously the relationship has changed over the years, and they've spent time apart and come back together to work on bits, then time apart. And I'm just really interested to see how that whole kind of thing works, nowadays, because we know they're both very different people nowadays. They work very differently nowadays to how they used to work. So I'm intrigued to kind of see where it will go and what they will do with it and how it will hopefully progress.
Yeah, hopefully it will progress. I know they've got over a year's worth of songs, I should say, together. They've been in the same studio together for well over a year now, up until this point. So I'm hoping that maybe those songs for other people that they're doing. I know there are a lot of them for other people. I'm hoping if they didn't make it to other people's albums, they'll at least come out as the Neptunes album. And actually, I hope Pomegranate isn't on it. But I hope I hope all the other stuff is.
Yeah, I think as most people say, we want to see a Clones Part 2. I don't know if that will. I don't think it will ever happen, obviously, but it would be nice to see something like that now that we do have the Neptunes, kind of officially back together again. Whether it's just an album of stuff between them, which is more maybe N.E.R.D like, or whether it is maybe an album which is featuring lots of different people, maybe tracks that don't make other albums, or whatever it may be. It would be interesting to kind of see another kind of project like that.
Fingers crossed.
All right, well, I guess let's wrap it up there. It's been about an hour, so pretty much on time. Anything else from yourself, Aaron?
Actually, I've got one thing. Anyone listening, I have just done an isolation tape for Billionaire Boys Club Europe, which I don't know if they're actually going to use. So if you speak to them, bug them, tell them to put out my tape. I sent it over to Ross a while ago. And that's it. No, thanks for having me on here. I enjoy listening to this. It's been good.
It's been a pleasure. It's been good to have you on. And I'll definitely ping Ross a message in a minute as well, and tell him to get that out.
Yeah, I've been bugging him. I've been saying, like, Ross, when's it coming?
And I think since the last podcast, there may have been another one released. I saw a post about some more of the kind of isolation mixtapes. So what is there, 5 or 6 now at the moment? I think something like that.
Yeah, I think that's quite a few. I tried to do one based on kind of the tastes of someone that would like the Neptunes. So the way I pitched it to Ross before he agreed I could do it, I pitched it as kind of, it's just, if you like the Neptunes, you kind of like a bit of skater rock, you like a bit of electronic music, you like something really avant-garde, you might like some hip hop, you might like some jazz. So I tried to do mine based on all of those, but I shouldn't get ahead of myself because it's not out. So I need to wait for him to approve it.
Yeah, so everyone, get on Instagram and hit up. I won't say hit up Ross directly. Don't do that. He probably wouldn't be happy. But go to BBC EU, go to their page, or tag them, or send them a message, and tell them you need that Aaron mixtape for sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Good stuff. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there. So you can stream this podcast and get the show notes via the website over at theothers.net. Otherwise, you can find us on all the usual podcast apps and Spotify, which you're probably already listening to this via anyway. You can find the podcast on Instagram at Otherz Podcast, obviously Others with a Z. You can find me at Steve R. Penny. And Aaron, where can people find yourself?
Just find me on Instagram at Aaron Mavis. That's it, Aaron Mavis.
Good stuff, and there'll be a link in the show notes to that as well. So we'll wrap it up for this week. Thank you to everyone, and we'll speak to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cue me, dog.